You're listening to a CNA podcast.
We spend almost our entire adult lives saving money and building up wealth, hopefully with the help of this podcast, to work towards our retirement. The irony, right? Some 40 plus years of toiling to make sure that we can hopefully enjoy our golden years instead of struggling in old age. I'm Andrea Heng. This is the Money Talks podcast. Now, it's not hard to see why many of us are seriously thinking about retiring overseas. The cost of living pressures have made retiring in Singapore more expensive. So people are casting their eyes on places like Johor, Phuket, Bali, pockets in Taiwan, and even Japan. So what should the financial considerations be? So today I'm asking Joie Lim. She's Group Financial Service Director, Private Wealth Consultant at Prudential.
Hi, Andrea. Thanks for having me.
So Joy, retirement, it really can look like a lot of different things to different people, right? So some people, the moment they turn 60 or even before they turn 60, they're already saying, you know what? I'm just going to stop working. It's a hard stop for me. And they are even willing to do that and live on less money, that is. Others, they are willing to continue working for as long as they can because they want that fulfillment and they don't really have like a number in mind. So I'm curious, which category do you fall into?
I think for me, I fall more into the slowing down, but not totally stopping work because I don't think I'll be able to not work.
Yeah. I know what you
Or
mean.
if not, I'll be very bored. Okay, but it's really more of early retirement that I'm looking at. So probably around the age of like 50s plus, I hope to not be able to have to work for money. Okay, but it'll be more of slowing down because I still really enjoy the work that I do and I have a lot of passion for it. So I would really rather continue to groom the next generation and all, but not have to worry about money or think about mortgage loans to pay, etc. at that point in time. Yeah.
What about the clients that you serve? How many of them think about retirement early?
A lot of my clients actually think about retirement early. Maybe it's because as we chat, right, then naturally our perspective will shift together, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of my clients actually plan for retirement in their 50s, 55 or so, not so much the 60s or 65.
Right.
Okay, mainly because there'll be concerns about forced early retirement. You might not be able to work if we fall sick, our body might not be able to continue. That's one. Or if we get retrenched, we might not be able to find a job in our 50s. It might not be so easy. Because of that, a lot of people prefer to have backup plan, so they plan for 50s plus. Then if at that point in time they still want to continue working, they can choose to.
Let's get into the details, right? Let's talk about what it means. It actually means to retire elsewhere. What do I need to think about financially?
Okay, I think that retiring overseas is a very big move and it's a very exciting journey, right? But then it's important to consider many other additional factors beyond retiring in Singapore, although the fundamentals really don't change. So firstly, I think it's important to consider the cost of obtaining our retirement status in our country of choice. So for example, right, some countries like New Zealand, right, they require investments of 750,000 to actually get a retirement visa.
Wow!
Yeah, so it's not a small amount. It's definitely something that we need to plan for. Yeah, so we also need to research on the cost of whether we want to renounce or keep our Singapore citizenship because that can impact our eligibility for things like welfare benefits or medical subsidies in our new country of residence. And that will determine how much medical coverage we'll need to prepare for. Okay, there are also people who might want to come back to Singapore if anything happens, like if they fall sick, then they will need to consider maintaining the health insurance policies that they have here. Then definitely need to plan for housing. So we need to find out the cost of buying a house in our country of choice and preferably during retirement, there should be no mortgage loans to pay. So we need to ensure that there's enough funds to actually pay for a property. Okay, and next we need to probably determine the lifestyle that you want during retirement and find out the cost of living this lifestyle. Okay, it's really very detailed and you need to do it in a very deep dive manner. So you need to consider like groceries, utilities, dining, entertainment, travel plans, basic healthcare at GPs, how much all this will cost.
Correct.
And it can differ very much from country to country. So it's important to deep dive and then also factor in things like inflation, exchange rates, and potential fluctuations.
Yes, that's right. I think this is something that's really come to the forefront of all of our minds, especially inflation in recent years. So that's a really comprehensive list of what we need to consider financially. I want to talk about our assets here in Singapore. So you mentioned things like if we want to consider hanging on to certain things in Singapore. So what does happen to our assets, including including our CPF savings when we retire overseas?
Okay, I think when we are planning for retirement, we really need to determine the amount that we actually need to live the lifestyle that we want in our country of choice.
Sure.
So we need to understand the income sources that we have to supplement this lifestyle.
Yeah.
So all our savings in Singapore, our investments, any dividends, rental properties, any rental income, pension funds, CPF, etc. should all be taken into account to determine if the resources are going to be enough for us to retire with the lifestyle that we actually want. Okay, so in terms of CPF savings, if we choose to go overseas and if we are renouncing our citizenship, naturally CPF account would be closed and then after that it will be paid out to you.
Right.
Okay, but if you choose to not renounce your citizenship, you also need to take note that CPF life payout can only be paid to Singapore accounts.
Right.
Yeah. Then other assets, right, we need to consider whether we want to keep or we want to sell. You know, if we want to keep it, for example, we have rental income that will actually help in our lifestyle overseas,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
We can consider that, or we can consider changing it to a new currency. But we also need to take note that we cannot keep everything in Singapore as well, because certain countries, to give you a retirement visa and your status, they require you to keep a certain sum of money in their bank accounts.
Okay. See, that's the thing that a lot of people may not even think about, because you often think about retiring or moving overseas as like a monopoly board. I'm just going to take my little thing and I'm just going to like pop, depending on how much money I have. So that's really interesting. I'm glad that you brought that up. What about non-financial considerations? We talk often about the bills, and that's causing us enough anxiety. What about the non-financial considerations?
Okay, I think there's a lot to think about when we are planning to retire overseas. A lot of people think of it, like you mentioned, very simply, like, you know, just a monopoly set and then you move it, right?
Yeah.
But it's really not like that, okay? Other than the financial considerations, right, the non-financial ones are just as important. You need to consider a destination that you want to move to for retirement. And you need to consider factors like culture, the language. Can you converse with people? Yeah, the climate, do you like, you know, the beach, or do you even like, you know, harsh winters and all that? Okay.
Some Singaporeans will say, yes, give me winter.
yes, they'll say that, but it's very different when you are really there for 3 whole months and it's dark and gloomy and all. Yeah, so it's very different. Destination can also consider things like accessibility, the safety, the security. And one thing to take note is during retirement, we have a lot of time. Wherever we want to go to must allow us to pursue activities that we really enjoy.
Yeah.
So then from a logistic angle, like we need to consider healthcare facilities, whether we can get the quality of care that we want efficiently. Okay, of course, insurance needs, housing, like I mentioned, access to transport, and even access to communities. So for example, I have a friend who stays in Perth. So she shared that the Asian community over there, they're segregated into areas based on different countries they come from. Like Malaysia and Singaporeans, then Korean will stay in one area, etc.
Right.
Yeah, so she chose to stay where the Malaysians and Singaporeans mostly stay.
All right.
So that's what I mean by access to communities.
Right. I think also when you were talked about healthcare, the thing that came to my mind was emergencies.
Yeah.
Medical emergencies. You need to make sure that you're near something that gives you access to medical facilities immediately if you need medical attention. And I think transportation is also something people don't think about. Yes, you can own your own car, but what if you're immobile? You need to have easy access to public transport, right? I'm really surprised to learn of these little enclaves in Perth. I need to go visit them and then maybe eat the different kinds of food from these houses.
Like you mentioned, the enclaves and all that. I think it's very important because from the social angle, right, we also need to consider how we feel about the distance from the people that we love and how easy it would be to stay connected and to get support during like emergencies. Okay, so we can have our own preferences in our retirement, like where we want to stay, etc. But we are all interconnected individuals, right? So if we have children that love us and want to be there for us, then we need to consider the distance and the ease of staying connected. And other than that, beyond the family ties, we also need to consider ourselves. A friend of mine actually shared that when she migrated, the biggest challenge she faced was actually loneliness.
Oh, no.
Yeah, she has since built her own community. But then beyond our family, we also need to ask ourselves, are we able to build a new community in our country of choice? Because it might not be so easy to build a network when we have lesser interactions during retirement.
Yeah.
And then then we need to ask ourselves a very real question. How adaptable are we and how comfortable are we with making new friends?
Especially at that age.
Yes, exactly. Don't you feel that when we get older, it's
we just want to be reclusive, or making friends is a chore. It's so
sometimes
tiring.
it can be so, right? Yeah. So imagine during retirement. Yeah.
It's very hard, I think, for us younger folks to put ourselves in those shoes because we're not there yet. It's just like any stage in life when you're a teenager, I'll worry about it when I'm an adult, and then adulthood comes and then, oh no, it's here. I have to think about it now. Okay, so I have friends, plenty of friends who have moved overseas, living there, not as a retirement project, so to speak, but they've done it in their younger years. So walk me through the differences here between living and retiring overseas. Are the considerations the same?
No, I think it is very different. I think like there's a huge difference between living and retiring overseas. So first and foremost, the motivation and the reasons for living and retiring overseas are entirely different. So a lot of young Singaporeans, they might choose to live and work overseas for reasons like exposure, adventure, experience, or even career progression. Like some companies expect you to have overseas exposure before they promote you. Yeah, so these are usually temporary and there's a defined return plan. Whereas for retirement, the time frame is usually long term and is indefinite. It could be for reasons like lower cost of living or even reasons like I have a client who invests their funds in New Zealand because of global warming and they want to live in a country whereby the temperature is more livable over long term. Or if our kids migrate, we might choose to be retiring near them. Okay, so the motivation and the reasons are different to start off. Then the amount of planning requires is also different. Okay, because when we are living overseas, we are young, we are able to work. Less upfront planning is required because we can still earn an income. If we don't like it, right, we can come home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have
or
a fail-safe
at
home.
Yes, we can relocate to somewhere else.
Yeah.
But when we are retiring overseas, I think there's less flexibility because we are not able to work and earn more income. And every move, right, will incur additional costs. It's also harder to get a retirement visa versus a work visa.
That's right. Because people need you to work.
Yes,
they don't necessarily
you're
need you
actively
to
contributing
retire.
to the economy.
That's right.
Versus a retirement visa, you need to have more investments requirements.
That's right. I think that's a very good point to point out, by the way. So, based on your work in wealth management, what would you say surprises most people about retiring overseas?
In my course of work, when I talk to a lot of people, right, there are quite a few misconceptions about retiring overseas. To start off with, a lot of people feel that Singapore is very expensive, places confirm cheaper. Okay, I want to say that although we have a high cost of living, we do have pockets like, hawker centers and all that are cheaper and all. And the cost of living really varies significantly depending on our lifestyle choice and where we choose to live. Okay, and there are also other countries where the standard of living is also not low. And when we are retiring overseas, we need to consider things like exchange rates, okay, or even cost of traveling home to visit our family. Or even unsubsidized healthcare if we are not going to renounce our citizenship, right? So it's important to research thoroughly before considering retiring overseas just because we think it's cheaper. Okay, and secondly, a lot of us travel these days, right? Then we go to a country and then we'll feel like, wow, it's so nice here. I want to retire here. I feel like I can live here forever.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very true. Okay, I also go through that very common. But traveling and retiring is entirely different. Okay, so we must be prepared for adjustment challenges along the way. Like I mentioned, right? Harsh winters, 3 months, gloomy and dark, 5 hours of daylight. Are we sure we're going to like it? Versus 3 weeks of holiday, very nice.
Of course,
okay?
and you get to pick out your jacket
and
all
look good, right?
Yeah.
But if it's ongoing, you might not love it so much, right?
That's right.
Or it could also be not being able to buy groceries and food that we're used to, chicken rice, laksa.
Where's my sambal belacan?
Yeah. Okay, so there are all these concerns as well that we should think about whether we can really adapt. Okay, and the third one is that a lot of people think that we automatically make friends. Okay, but like I mentioned, building a social network can be difficult as we age. And we need to consider with language and cultural differences, is it really going to be so easy? Okay, we must understand if you want it to be a good experience, it requires a lot of proactiveness and constant efforts on your own part to go and integrate into a already closely knitted community.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why people tend to want to do this when they're younger, right? To move overseas and to live and experience.
Yes, but But that's quite different. When we're retiring, I think we don't have so much social interactions.
Correct,
Then it would be harder to actually make friends. Yeah. And I think the last one is that a lot of people feel that, like you mentioned, the monopoly piece, right? Just from here to there, it's just like that. And then we can just, okay, go. But it doesn't work that way. I think it requires a lot of meticulous planning, and we should not underestimate the preparation that's involved. Like, we need to really plan in a lot of detail. And if you can mitigate as much as possible before the move, you can join communities online before you relocate. So you get to make some friends first. You can research on healthcare needs and buy additional insurance if needed. Or you can pick out the language in your country of choice so you can better integrate. Or you can consider things like advanced care plan. If we are sick, we are not mobile, right? Are there facilities that actually support our plans? And lastly, very importantly, we need to consider our estate planning, the tax implications. Speak to lawyers, professionals here as well as in the new country so that you know your options. Okay, so we need to plan meticulously so that we can have a smoother execution, then we are not caught off guard.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I think this is seriously giving me more things to think about, because I was considering retiring overseas or even moving overseas in the later half of my life. It looks like I have a lot more homework to do.
Yeah,
And
you
you've
can
given
speak
a
to
lot.
me again.
Joy, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much for giving me this homework to do. Now, before we let you go, this is the fun part of the podcast. I have here a hat. And in this hat, there are 5 questions. And I'll need you to pick one, hand it over to me, and then I will read it out to you. All right, Joy. Oh, okay. If you could have a meal with any public figure, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
I think it would be Lee Kuan Yew.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
Why?
I would want to know his feelings, his emotions at the point whereby he was founding Singapore and all that he went through, the struggles and all that to become the leader that he was. Yeah, and how he brought Singapore to where we are today.
Yeah. What would you order at this lunch?
Chicken rice.
Let's go for our chicken rice now, Joy. Thanks so much once again for your insights. Really invaluable.
Okay, thank you so much for having me.
And to you, listener, we hope this episode gave you some food for thought too. You got a question or comment? Slide into our DMs, okay? Money Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube Music. Don't forget to rate us if you're enjoying the podcast. Thanks to the team as well: Crispina Robert, Tiffany Ang, Junaini Johari, Joanne Chan, and Saya Wind. And thank you for listening to Money Talks. I'm Andrea Heng.